My name is Loe. Ah, I am 66 years old. Oh, top town. I have been a widow for almost 20. Me? I raised my daughter alone after I lost my husband, Frank, in a winter as cold as the silence that now lives in this house. And you know what hurts me the most? It wasn't what life took away from me. That's what my own daughter forced me to swallow. Tell me, Tony, how does a mother become a maid inside the house she built herself? Maybe you think I'm exaggerating. That mother is mother. More packages. Another and daughter is daughter. And family is all the same. But I experienced firsthand the transformation of a home into a collection office. Give a hug in order. From a good morning, Mom, in a spreadsheet of tasks pasted on the fridge. Have you ever felt useless where you were once needed? Has it ever been treated as an expense by those you have supported your entire life? Today I'm going to tell you the truth that got stuck in the throat of many mothers like me. A story that has no scream, but has a wound. That there is no slap, but there is betrayal. Now, and when it comes to the end, you understand why silence is also a form of screaming. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. There's a moment when we understand, once and for all, that love does not prevent cruelty. I was sitting in my own kitchen when Amanda placed a folded paper on the table, her voice colder than winter in Boston. She said, "Now, I'm not a deb. Either you follow this here, or leave." It was a schedule, cleaning, of schedules, of obligations, a paper that told me the time I should wake up, cook, shut up and disappear. What if I refused? I would be thrown out of the house I bought with my sweat. That was no longer coexistence. It was slavery disguised as help. And it was there, without screaming or fighting, that the ground disappeared beneath my feet. If you've ever felt like you've lost the right to exist in the place you built yourself, then stay with me, because this story is not only mine. If my outburst touches any part of your heart, I humbly ask you, like this video and subscribe to the channel. It shows me that I'm not alone, and that there are still people who know how to recognize what's fair. It will be difficult to tell, but I need to. I remember it as if it were yesterday, the day Frank and I signed the contract for the house. It was small, small, reddish brick, with a balcony that he renovated himself little by little. At the time, we had almost nothing but hope. We lived in Dorchester, and Frank said that a home was made with more silence than noise, more care than luxury, much ado and one. And that's what we built together. Masigam, silence, care, and true love. Me. For 12 years. That man treated me with a respect that to this day warms my chest. He never raised his voice, nor his hand. We shared everything, even dreams. When he was gone, when I thought the ground was going to swallow me. Amanda was only 17 years old. I was in the last year of school. It was there that I swallowed my tears, folded my sleeves, and went to fight. I worked for 34 years as a public secretary, And at night, I still picked up clothes from the neighbors to sew. I sat in the living room after she slept and sewed until 2 in the morning. I'd sew, with the machine making that noise that only those who have sewn know. That tick-tick that seems to pray along with us. I sewed sheets, wedding dresses, my calm, curtains, Halloween costumes, everything that paid plus a bill, plus a book, plus a registration. Now, and you know what kept me standing? To see Amanda sleeping peacefully in the next room. I said to myself, she doesn't need to know about weight. She just needs to know about love. There was never a lack of breakfast, nor snack in the lunchbox. And when it came time for college, I was the one who signed each ticket. She went to study in Worcester, calm. And every Sunday, I made pasta with fresh tomato sauce for when she came to visit. He washed her sheets, packed her suitcase, and sent her back with more food than clothes. Because that's what a mother is, right? We send love inside a plastic pot. I remember her graduation day very well. Amanda wore a navy blue gown, her hair tied in a firm bun, and her smile. Ah, the smile. She called me on stage, gave me a hug, and whispered, "Oh, Tanya, this victory is yours." Mom, at that moment, I felt that it had all been worth it, that every stitch of the sewing, every bus lost, every sleepless night, everything was paid for there, in the brightness of her eye. For a long time, I thought that this love was enough. I thought that because I had given everything, I would never lack respect. But time has a hard way of showing where we went wrong. I thought I was planting gratitude, but sometimes the soil where we plant doesn't have roots to hold memory. And what I reaped later, it was something else. The house was just for me when she moved in. I kept everything clean, in place, as if Frank was still there. The light curtains, the dark wood furniture, the antique kettle on top of the stove. My days were simple. But my steps had meaning. I got up, drank my coffee, listening to the radio, read the newspaper, took care of the garden. Sometimes she received her friends for tea. Sometimes she just watched the birds in the backyard. And I thought I fulfilled my role. Now I can rest in peace in my home, mayhem. But where I've plays its tricks. 2 years ago, Amanda called me crying. Michael had lost his job. Hi, also, but John Dio. The boys were out of school, and their rent had gone up. It's just for a while. Mom, she said, and I, without thinking twice, said, Lester town, China. I don't you come, because that's how I am. When we love, we don't measure. We just open the door. Little did I know that that open door was going to lock me in a room without a voice. No moment of reflection. Do you know what it's like to give your life for someone, and one day feel that they see you as an obstacle? Like an old piece of furniture in the house that no longer matches the decor. If this has happened to you, If this pain has also visited you, comment here. I've lived it. Uh, just so I know, in not talking to myself, just for us to meet in each other's silence. In those first months, I tried to see the bright side, the grandchildren running around the house, the smell of popcorn at night, the joy of having voices filling the rooms again. Why, I thought it was a new beginning, but it was the end, disguised as company. Oh, and it was in this routine that the dismantling began. A comment here, an order there, and I, who thought I had built an eternal home, began to be treated as a temporary guest. Everything I had given began to disappear. Why, but it was still not the worst. There was still more. Well, can you imagine what was the first sign that that house was no longer mine? The answer I'll tell you in the next part, because it was there that love became a charge and the mother became a servant. When Amanda and Michael arrived, it was as if the silence of the house was filled with life again. The boys ran straight to the backyard. Leo, the little one, wow, then hugged me tightly. And Luke, Wynay's tall, already older, just said a shy hi. But with a smile that warmed me, I prepared lasagna, set the table with cloth napkins and dishes, something I only used on special dates. I wanted them to feel welcomed. You know, we try so hard not to miss anything that when we have the chance to give again, we give it with pleasure. In the first days, it was beautiful. The house alive, smelling of hot food, the laughter of children, the voices in the hallways. I felt useful again. Amanda would say thank you. Why, Mom. And that was enough. But it was just time passing a little. That cracks began to appear. And as always with cracks, they start out too small for us to notice until the wall gives way. The first thing that really bothered me was when Amanda looked at the kitchen and said, "Do you still keep all this?" Mom, this shelf could be more practical. It was just an observation. But the way she said it, it seemed critical. Now, the next day, without asking me, she took all my pots out of the closet and rearranged everything. I spent 40 years with that system. He knew where everything was, even with his eyes closed. When I went to make dinner on Leo, I didn't find anything. She also said, "Now it's better, me. You'll see." But it wasn't about being better. It was about being mine. How? And I saw there a shadow of invasion, but I swallowed hard, nay, under down, because a mother's love is still greater than the desire to complain. Michael also began to show who he was. One day, I walked into the living room and the armchair Frank bought for me, the brown one where he read the newspaper on Sundays, was gone. In its place, a huge piece of equipment, which he called a work table. He said that the armchair was in the basement, so as not to disturb the improvised office. He didn't consult me. He just did. When I asked, Amanda laughed and said, "Well, oh, the Mom?" It was just an old chair. That hurt me more than if they had pushed me down the stairs. Because it wasn't just a chair. It was the memory of the only man who looked at me with tenderness until the end of his life. Then came the coffee, Nishanam. I always brewed strong coffee, just the way Frank liked it. Amanda began to complain. Oh, it's weak. It's watery. Michael prefers another type. One day, she went into the kitchen and made her own coffee, as if I no longer knew how to take care of even the coffee maker. Gradually, I realized that I was no longer a host. She was a kind of caretaker of the house, and I still tried to convince myself that it was something in my head, that maybe it was just adaptation, that helping was giving space. But the truth is that that space was not being divided. It was being taken. The worst, however, as it was Luke, the oldest. He always called me Grandma. One day, in front of Amanda and Michael, he blurted out, "Lou, where's my sneakers?" I stopped. "Lou?" I pretended I didn't hear, but he repeated it. Amanda laughed. "We see, no, Hughes." Michael didn't even look. That kept echoing in my head. Lou. It wasn't my name. It was a cold nickname, a way to move away from the role that I carried with so much love. It was as if there, in that simple sentence, they had renamed me. From grandmother to employee, from scratch to guest. I was still trying to convince myself that it was all temporary, that soon Michael would find a job. That Amanda would realize that I was exaggerating, that the boys would look at me with the affection they used to be. But the days went by, and instead of improvement, new rules came, new layout of the house, new way of dealing with me. And I realized my house no longer recognized me, and what Amanda called suggestions. It was already control. It's curious how it takes us a long time to realize that we've lost space. He gives a sofa, then a pot, then a word. When you see, he has already given up his name, respect, and even the right to speak his mind. But I felt, deep in my chest, that this was just the beginning. That if I didn't do something, I would be completely gone. Can you imagine the exact moment when I realized that they were trying to erase me from my own history? Because that's it, that I stopped giving in, and I began to observe. Over time, what was once uncomfortable became disrespect, and it was no longer hidden. It was in my face, naturally, as if I had really ceased to exist in there. Amanda no longer hurt me, literally. I said that the rice was in the top cupboard. She ignored it. No. I suggested putting away the groceries as I always did. She rolled her eyes. Once, I asked her not to use scented soap on Frank's clothes, which I still kept fondly, and she replied, "No, I didn't cow." "Oh, Mom, no." That's just old cloth. You need to let go. Old cloth. It was the shirt he wore on my first dinner. The sweatshirt he picked me up from at the bus stop on cold January nights. But for my daughter, Celine, at his hours short, it was just cloth. Michael no longer disguised his contempt. He started leaving dirty shoes at the kitchen door, turned on the TV loud at dawn, complained about my soap in the shared bathroom. One day, I went through the mail and found a package with his name. When I handed it over, "Nah, least you," he said. "Mom, better not mess with my stuff, Lois," with that voice that is not exactly aggressive, but leaves a trail of poison wherever it goes. I started tiptoeing inside my own house. Even the way I sat on the couch started to feel wrong. I thought, new. Am I disturbing the view of the television? Am I sitting where I shouldn't? The day I saw Luke taking $20 from my purse was the one that shocked me the most. Not because of him, as a boy, as learning, but because of Amanda's reaction. When I spoke to her, now, hoping she would get his attention, oh, she laughed and said, Mom, oh, Mom, towards Ward is just a kid. You never stopped being dramatic. Dramatic, as if taking care of what is mine was exaggeration, as if my purse were a community safe. And the worst thing is that the boy looked at me after that with that air of she doesn't command anything. And he really didn't. Michael turned the garage into an office and started locking the door. It was as if that space had been officially removed from the map of the house. I wanted to pick up a Christmas box that was inside, and he said he needed to schedule an appointment. Schedule, Nancy Calm, with her own mother-in-law, to enter the garage that was paid for with my and Frank's sweat. At that time, I just took a deep breath, turned around and went to my room. I closed myself there and cried softly. It wasn't for the money. It was due to lack of consideration. Meals started happening without me. Amanda made the food and told the children. Michael already had the plate ready on his lap when I arrived. No one said, "Come and eat." Mom, nobody asked if I wanted something. I started preparing my own dish after everyone was done. Sometimes she ate alone in the kitchen, well, with the noise of the television coming from the living room. Other times, he just pretended he wasn't hungry, because more than an empty stomach, the empty place hurt. Now, the absence of the invitation, why, the absence of the gesture, lion calm, a sin or was so deep. I still tidied the rooms, washed the sheets, mopped the furniture, but they no longer thanked me. It was as if it were my obligation, as if that was my role. One day, Luke, Howell, das International Topicon, I heard Amanda on the phone saying, "Oh, it's okay here now. My mother helps with the cleaning, with the children." Ah, it breaks a branch. That tore me inside. Break a branch? That's not what I did. I held the whole house. And yet, it was little. No, it was invisible. You know that point where our body is still present, but the soul is becoming silent. I started to live like that, on automatic. My days were a sequence of nameless tasks, of unnoticed silences, of looks that crossed my presence as if I were a piece of furniture. I, who was the floor of this family, now became a carpet trodden on. Without Delondi, what a couch. But not every woman who is silent is weak. Sometimes she is just waiting for the right time to get up. And this time was closer than Amanda could have imagined. Because what she did next, it was not just injustice. It was cruelty. And that's when that I stopped crying and started planning. Do you know what she did? You will understand when I tell you what was written on that paper. It was a Monday morning, one of those very common ones, which start with the smell of coffee and the noise of birds at the window. I was sitting at the kitchen table, with my cup in my hands, looking out the window, trying to remember when was the last time that house made me feel at home. Amanda came down in a hurry. She didn't even say good morning to me. She had briefcase in her hand. She seemed nervous, decisive. Michael came right behind, with that face of someone who is just there to confirm what has already been decided. And it was then that she put the paper in front of me. Well, without a look, without a smile, without even sitting at the table. She only said, "From today on, now, this needs to be followed." Mom. I looked at the paper. Mom. It was a schedule. Time to wake up. Time to make breakfast. Prepare the boys. Clean the bathrooms. Shop. Wash clothes. Organize toys. And even quiet hours. As if I were a contract employee. Or worse, a domestic prisoner. I read every line trying to understand if it was serious. And it was. Michael, leaning against the sink, added, "No, with your retirement, you can help with expenses. It's not fair for us to carry everything alone." And Amanda, cold as ever, said, "I'll waste your card, and then I want you to word. You live for free." Mom, this is just organization. If you're not happy, you can look elsewhere. But know that, legally, we have the right to housing. That cut me deeper than any word said before, because it was no longer about sharing space or about a difficult time. It was about power, about putting myself in the place of a subordinate, of weight, of someone who, Naradakan, in order to stay, would have to obey. I tried to take a deep breath. I looked at Amanda as if there was still a chance for her to realize the absurdity of it. He said, in a low voice, "This house is mine. Amanda, I bought it. This is where you grew up. How do you have the courage to impose this on me?" And she, without hesitation, replied, "Oh, no, Tom. You always dramatize everything. We just want organization. Now, if this is too much for you, and it didn't have to end, I understood everything. Either I would become the cleaning lady of the house I built, or I would be discarded as an old piece of furniture that hinders circulation. At that moment, something inside me died, but something else was born. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just got up from the chair, folded the paper, and put it in the drawer. Well, Michael asked if I had understood, and I replied, I understand perfectly, ma'am. The house was so quiet that I could hear the clock on the wall, marking every second of my humiliation. And yet, they went back upstairs as if nothing had happened, as if it had been just another Monday. But I, I was no longer the same. I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story with all the wounds showing. If you're listening, give me a sign. Leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. I still have a lot to tell you, and knowing that there is someone listening to me on the other side gives me the strength to continue, because sometimes we just need a soul that listens without judging. I continued the day normally. No, I made dinner. No, tidied up the kitchen, said good night to the boys, but inside, I was no longer the woman who swallowed everything quietly. I had seen in my daughter's eyes something I never thought I would see: coldness, calculation. One candidate stab, as is yours, convenience. And when a mother recognizes this in the eyes of the one who gave birth, there is no turning back. From then on, I began to see each gesture with different eyes, and it was like this that I prepared the first step of what would come later. Because you know that paper? That's that. It wasn't the last one I read. There was another one. Went see how old Sasha, much more revealing. And this one, I own, everything changed. That night I didn't sleep. I went to bed early, turned off the light, turned sideways, but the body did not rest. My head spun, as if each memory of my life decided to pass in a line right in front of my eyes. I relived every sacrifice, every night of vigil with Amanda when she was still small and had a high fever. I found myself running to the pharmacy with change counted, putting a wet cloth on her forehead, praying softly that God wouldn't take me the only good I had in life. I remembered when I didn't have money for a full dinner, and I said I wasn't hungry just for her to eat everything. I remembered the nights I spent awake waiting for her to come home from college, the coffee I left ready with a note, the coat I bought in the winter instead of a new one for me, everything for her. And now she called me weight, of expense, from an uncomfortable guest, as if I hadn't built with my hands every brick of this house, every tile, every wall that supported this roof, as if I were just an old woman who parachuted there. I thought of Frank. If he saw that, he wouldn't believe it. He treated me like a queen, even when we only had beans and stale bread on the table. He said that the greatest treasure of life was knowing how to repay the love received. And I believe that, and he really believed. I got out of bed when the clock struck 3. And I couldn't lie down anymore. I put on my slippers, grabbed my shawl, and started walking around the dark house. The room was empty, but with their marks everywhere. Michael's sneakers played in the corner, the laptop open on the table where Frank and I had tea in the evening, the little table on the porch where I used to read, now served as a storage room. The smell of the house had changed. Before it was lavender, huts, fresh coffee and bread in the morning. Now it was plastic, disorganization, and reheated food. Everything there seemed strange to me, as if the house had been taken over by another family. Oh, and I had just been forgotten inside. I walked down the hallway, ran my hand over the walls, as if looking for some hidden memory. I arrived at Amanda's room, the door ajar. Nancy's down. I heard the breathing of the boys. A part of me still loved every bit of them, but it was a love with a scar. Love that I already knew was not enough. I stood there, with you, looking through the crack, and wondered where I went wrong. Did I spoil too much? Did I raise Amanda without teaching the value of a mother? Or could it be that life hardened her heart so much that there was no longer room for gratitude? I went back to the kitchen. I sat in the chair where, hours before, that paper had been left as a sentence. And there I stayed, looking at the empty table. I, who served so much in this kitchen, birthday cakes, hot soups, Sunday dinners, now sitting alone, like a maid who forgot to clock in. The silence was so deep that it seemed to scream. He screamed the pain that I didn't let out. He shouted the words that I could not answer. He screamed the tiredness of those who always gave. And now he needed to ask permission even to exist. Do you know when our hearts seem to be clogged with things that have no name? That's how I felt, a mixture of longing, anger, shame, and a kind of grief that not even death brings. A mourning for the daughter I raised now, and who now looked at me with calculation. A mourning for the house I built, and that now I didn't recognize myself. A mourning for myself, because that woman who walked around the house, who walked in the dark, who avoided noise so as not to disturb, that wasn't the Lois Frank loved. That was not the mother who survived everything to raise a daughter with dignity. It was just a draft, a battered sketch of the woman I once was. And deep down, deep in the soul, a question began to form, small, but insistent. Whoa, what if they were waiting for me to leave? Was this the plan all along? Was all this humiliation just a way to force me to give up? To leave the house? The history? What is mine? As if in no longer worth the space I occupy. The answer, He began to draw himself the next day, when an envelope arrived in the mail. And what was inside him? It was the snap that was missing for my silence to turn into action. Do you have any idea what a mother can discover? When do you stop asking and start investigating? Well, get ready, because what I found out in that envelope, it took me off the ground, but it also gave me wings. The envelope arrived on a cloudy morning, one of those that are born with the smell of something wrong in the air. It came addressed to me, but with strange, hurried handwriting, as if writing wanting to hide more than show. I opened it without much expectation. It was a bank statement from my old joint account, the one I had left for Amanda when she started college, to facilitate the deposits. But that account, it wasn't zero as I thought. There was movement, looting, online shopping, recurring transfers to another account that I didn't recognize. And there, in the footer, a footer, a name jumped out like a slap in the face. Michael T. Henderson. Wow. My daughter's husband. The man who, every month, complained about the tight financial situation, was using an account that I thought was deactivated, and with my name still on it. I felt a warmth rise on my face, a mixture of shame and anger. I closed the envelope and went to the balcony to breathe. Oh, I was heavy. Wow. And deep down, I knew that was just the tip of the iceberg, because whoever moves a hidden account, it hides more than money. It hides plans. It hides intentions. It hides lies. And it was with this tightness in my chest that same night, I heard what confirmed everything. I had gone to get a blanket from the attic. The stairs creaked, and I was always careful not to wake anyone. But at that time, the house was alive, not in celebration, but in conspiracy. The door to Amanda's room was ajar. When I first heard Michael's voice, low, harsh. She's still fine, but not for long. You're tired, old woman, no. He doesn't eat properly, Amanda replied with a short, almost nervous laugh. As soon as she dies, we sell the house, share it with the boys, and that's it. Moi. I froze, literally, as if time had stopped there, with me standing in the middle of the hallway, listening to my own daughter make plans for the world where I was no longer alive. It was as if my body was still breathing, but my soul had already been buried by them. I stood there, listening. Michael asked if she had spoken to the lawyer. Amanda said, "Oh, not yet, but it's on my radar." Then he added, "When I see you are, what's to make on? We just need her to sign the donation document while she is alive. If she is reluctant, we will press with that story of the right to housing. It bends." Oh my God. They were plotting like I'm a weight to be removed. As if my existence was an obstacle in their plans. They wanted the house, the money, the want here, the story, but without me inside. And at that moment, I understood. It was not an exaggeration. It wasn't drama. It was real. It was betrayal, coldness, and greed with name, surname, and CPF. I went back to my room without making a sound. I sat on the edge of the bed with the blanket on my lap, wasted shoe, and stared at the floor, repeating the phrase in his head, "As soon as she dies." It hammered, No, because until then, I had still tried to believe that it was just disrespect. That maybe it was cluelessness, immaturity, mild immaturity, stress, but no's. They were eliminating me in thought. That's it. This is unforgivable. That night, I didn't cry, because the pain had already passed from crying. It was a dry pain, hot, silent, war, missing apensorium, a pain that only those who have been betrayed by those they loved understand. And in that silence, a decision was born. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront it. I was going to listen, observe, lie, plan, because what was left for me now, there's a simple card, and Hamzil more afro. It was time, and I had learned, well, with life, that time is the only ally that the truth respects. If you had come this far, listening to my story, I need to tell you something. What comes next will move you, because so far, I've only told you what they did to me. But from here, you'll see what I did. Because when a mother discovers that she has become a burden, she may even shut up, but it never goes out. And the next thing I found, at the bottom of a drawer, Hessin key. It was the key to my turnaround. Have you ever wondered what a malicious signature can reveal? I found out. And that's when that everything has changed. The next morning, Universität on a track to Obertown. When Shirley Sticks, I sat on the sofa in the living room with a photo album on my lap. It was one of the old ones, with a fabric cover and the smell of paper kept for decades. I took it from the back of the closet, where I keep things that no one else wants to see, but that for me still have a soul. I needed to remember, not of pain, but of love, of history, from the beginning of everything. And there, wow, on that front page, there was Amanda, aged 3, on her father's lap, dressed as a bunny at Easter. Frank smiled with an overflowing pride. Me, behind them, holding the chocolate egg that we saved 3 months to buy. I remember her laughter. Me, that sweet, toothless laugh, calling us Mommy and Daddy, as if there was no safer place in the world than our embrace. I flipped through another page. Christmas, 1990. Amanda in front of the tree. Oh, cow. Holding a gift wrapped in newsprint. Because that year the money was not enough. She smiled the same. He jumped for joy, as if he had won the world. And inside that package, I only had a rag doll that I sewed by hand. She slept with that doll for 5 years. He called her Clara. I cried when I forgot at school. And now, it was as if all of that had been erased. I saw the photo from our first trip to Cape Cod. She and I sat on the sand, my feet buried, our hair wet from the sea. Frank watching us with an old camera. Amanda, and one. At that time, looked at me as if I was everything. Everything. You're the best mom in the world, she said. And it wasn't just a sentence. It was a pure feeling of a child who has not yet learned to measure love. I read that smile like someone reading an old letter, and I asked myself, where did this girl go? I held up a picture of our old house, decorated for Halloween. Amanda dressed as a little witch, me in an apron, with flour on my face. He had made bread that night, and she would run out into the streets screaming trick or treat, as if she owned the entire neighborhood. I remembered Sundays at church, holding hands, of the navy blue dress she wore, with a ribbon in her hair. I remembered the times she drew hearts for me, stuck notes on the fridge. Love you. Mommy, you are my safe haven. I kept everything. To this day, I keep a box full of these papers, like someone trying to keep a piece of their daughter's soul before it turns into something else. But now, looking at all this, what I felt was a cut, because affection has become a charge. Love turned into debt, and me, I became a civil servant with old affections. The woman who educated, fed, nihiled, had still now nadide. I did still doctors, protected, now but on time. Now he was a nuisance, a piece out of place. Someone who had to collaborate with the domestic system or get out of the way. Amanda, my Amanda, that sweet, curious-eyed girl, niece, who clung to my skirt for fear of the thunder, was now making plans with her husband to sell the house where she learned to walk, to sell my home, as if I had already left. Reflective pause. Do you know what hurts the most? It is not contempt. It is the transformation. Now, to see someone you created with love become unrecognizable. Coldness does not come all at once. It infiltrates small gestures, cut sentences, doors that close. If you've ever felt this pain, comments here. I understand you, just so I know that it's not just me who carries this weight on my chest. I closed the album slowly. His hands trembled a little, not of age, but in mourning, because that was really a mourning. I fight for a daughter who was still alive, but who no longer lived in my heart in the same way. It was a new Amanda. Practice, line, calculating, no, and heaven, in a way, lost from herself. Maybe someday she will understand what she did. Maybe not. But there, non, sitting alone, how, surrounded by happy images, I understood. There was no point in trying to reverse it with affection anymore. What she wanted from me now was not love. It was utility. And I wasn't made to be used. I was made to love and be loved back. And that's when I put that album back in the closet, that my eyes stopped on a black leather folder. Something told me to open it. And in there, what is it so? And it was a document, something that Amanda never imagined I would find. And this document gave me exactly what I needed. Mouse, you have no idea what might be signed in your name. Without your consent? Well, prepare your heart, because What I read there completely changed the course of this story. It was on Tuesday. I already had that weight on my chest from the envelope, from the album, now I'm sob, but she, from the poisoned words I heard behind the door. But what really made me break up wasn't any of those great pains. It was a small gesture disguised as a favor. Amanda showed up at my bedroom door with that same sweet shade she wears when she wants to push some cruelty with varnish of kindness. "Mom," she said, "we need to talk quickly." I already knew it wasn't fast at all, and much less a conversation. I sat on the edge of the bed. "One suo, one duo." She stood, holding her cell phone as if she were late. "Michael's mother, you know, Irene, I'm Uniseta of calm. She's going through some health problems and will need to stay here for a few weeks." I nodded. "I know. So, we thought maybe it would be good for you to sleep in the guest room. So, she stays up here with us. It's just for a while." She smiled. "Noun, what is a noisad?" That cold, automatic smile. And he added, "No, thou warned capsule. You understand? No, right? Understand? No." I understood everything. I understood that they were moving me, like a piece of furniture moves to make room, as if my stay in that house was always a temporary condition. I understood that not even my room, the only room that still held my smell, my pillow, my nightly prayers, was not guaranteed. Irene, who never called me, even on my birthday, was going to win the place of honor. And me? He would go to the basement, disguised as a guest room. I didn't answer. I just said, "Leave it to me." And I closed the door carefully. That night, I didn't cry. I also didn't pack my bags. I sat in the armchair, looking at the lighted lamp, listening to the sound of the wind hitting the windows. Irene would come. Yes, but he wouldn't find the Loa of before, because something inside me had already disconnected from that system. I, who have always been one to solve everything with sweetness. At that moment, I just wanted distance, peace, dignity, wow, and a little respect, even if only my own. The next morning, I woke up before everyone else, as I always did, but instead of preparing coffee, putting toast, filling the children's bottles, making pancakes without sugar, as Amanda liked, I wrote a note. "No. Is that it?" Pen and paper, Lindaris, a nut count, firm but serene lyrics. "Today, there is no coffee. Imtiad, Jan Town, Lidanstikadis, Kapgur Hisis." I folded it and left it on top of the kitchen counter, right next to the coffee maker. I went back to my room and closed the door. My ears later heard it all. The clinking of coffeeless cups, the voices rising, the noise of hurried footsteps. "Where's the coffee?" Shimon. Michael, grumbling. "I should. One like you." Amanda. Ow. Annoyed. Reading the note aloud. "Is she having a tantrum?" "Anadsane. Kai. Is she charming?" Then, just because we asked for a favor? I heard everything. But for the first time, it didn't hurt me, because I knew that absence, that simple refusal to do what I had always done, was louder than any discussion. I lay down, once, looked how, and even on an empty stomach, well, I felt a strange satiety, a calm, now, because it was the first day in a long time that I hadn't done anything out of obligation. A day when my existence didn't revolve around pleasing. They spent the day sulking. Amanda did not speak to me. Michael left and came back slamming the door. But the silence that surrounded me was no longer the same. He was no longer submission. It was a decision. And that late afternoon, I looked in the mirror and saw another woman. An Uptikaupa. It was still me, with white hair, hands scarred by time, but with different eyes, firm, vigilant. For the first time in a long time, I felt present within myself. Something has changed. It wasn't big yet, but he was alive, a burning flame, and they didn't notice. But I did. What if I told you that this little flame turned into a silent fire? Would you believe it? Well, you better believe, because the next day I found an old phone number inside Frank's Bible, and with a single connection, wow, the story began to take another turn. Can you imagine who answered on the other end of the line? Well, prepare your heart, because there are people who show up just when we need them most. And when I heard that voice, I knew the tables have turned. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds in the yard. The same sound that accompanied me for so many years, but this time it looked different. It was no longer just the sound of the morning. It was a call to myself. I got up slowly, put on my blue shawl, did down, the one Frank said made me look like an elegant teacher, and went to the kitchen. I prepared my coffee, my way, strong, bitter, little one, the way I've always liked it. I sat at the table alone, with the cup in my hands, and looked out the window. The sky was clear, the sun was starting to rise, and there, up in that silent instant, I felt it. I felt that something inside me had matured. I wasn't going to leave my house. They should be bothered, because this house, this story, it's mine, and I was no longer going to ask for permission to exist where I was a foundation. While I was drinking coffee, I took an old notebook from the drawer, the one I used to write down the market's expenses, in the times when every penny made a difference. I opened to the first new page and wrote, in firm handwriting, Bonds Wolikau, beginning of registration, 6:17 a.m. From then on, I started to write everything down. The milk bought by me. The electricity bill is paid with my pension. The children's clothes I washed. The food I made, even without thanks. Soap, rice, toothpaste, everything, every detail, every penny. because I knew that one day maybe they wouldn't just have my word anymore. And then I'll die. I would have the facts. I went to the bedroom. Hey, I'm Marcian too. Opened my document drawer. Hired you. At the bottom, wrapped in an old cloth, was the deed to the house. What is in my name? Only mine. With date, stamp, signature, and next to it, wow, the proof of financing, the paid slips, the deposit statements, one by one, the story of a life written on receipts, and the best, copies kept in different envelopes, hidden in 3 places in the house. I have always been cautious, and now, more than ever, it gave me the upper hand. Now, I also began to revisit other roles. I found an old contract from when Amanda was accepted to college, which I signed as a guarantor. I found notes, cards, even a notebook from when she was little, saying that when I grow up, I will take care of Mom as she takes care of me. I read that with a grip, not to miss him, but of verification. That life teaches, but not everyone learns. And sometimes, whoever we raise with so much love learns to use that love as weakness. No one realized what I was doing. They continued to act as if I were a shadow, an extension of the house. Amanda began to comment to Michael that maybe it would be better to sell his mother's car too, since I hardly went out anymore. I heard everything, and I wrote it down. It was that same day, before going to sleep, that I picked up the phone again. That number I found in Frank's Bible from an old friend of his, who is now a real estate lawyer in Brockton, called. His wife answered. I said he was traveling, but that he would get back to me the next day. I left a message. Calm, Nirin, Serena, Lundia Ashtan, and calm, with full name, noun, and a simple sentence. Well, I found you. I've come say here where that start. It's about the house on Church Street, and an attempt at appropriation. I did not give further details, but just saying that out loud, I felt that I had already taken the first step to get out of where they put me. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. Sometimes, all we need is to feel that there is someone else listening. I went back to sleep with the notebook next to the bed. Every night I wrote something down. A behavior, a phrase, a number, near their silvertop. It was no longer suffering. It was strategy. You lie down. How does the dead child? A detail. It was no longer waiting. It was preparation. And the most curious thing is that Amanda didn't even suspect it. She still had her eyes on her own navel, on the children, on her and Michael's plans. Little did she know that that silent woman she thought was defeated, he was already writing, line by line, the beginning of his turn. And it was then, on Saturday morning, that I heard a strange name being whispered on the speakerphone of Amanda's cell phone. She was in the living room and thought I wouldn't listen. But I listened, and when I heard, "Oh my, I knew they weren't just plotting. They were executing. My hands worse and worse, Dekia. Have you ever felt like they're trying to erase your history with a simple piece of paper? Well, wait to find out what name was on that phone call, and why did he move me so much. The next day, I put on my best coat, the gray one Frank loved, and left early. Without saying anything, Amanda was busy with the boys, Michael on the computer. As always, no one noticed that I was leaving without my shopping bag. I took the bus to downtown and got off there, near Tremont Street, where the Suffolk Registry of Deeds is located. I entered decisively, but with my heart beating strongly. I was afraid. I confess, not for me, but for what I could discover. I took a deep breath, explained what I wanted, and they directed me to a table. A young employee with a calm voice entered my data and pulled the registration number of the house. I followed with my eyes each line, each field. When she looked at me and said, ownership 100% in the name of Lois M. Rutherford. No registered transfers. No active powers of attorney. No encumbrances. My heart fell silent. It was not relief. It was confirmation. The house was still mine. Only mine. And they were counting on my death, but they had nothing concrete, only intentions. I left there with the documents in hand, firm. Wow. I walked through the streets of the center, the wind hitting my face, as if each step of mine now had a different weight. I remembered the lecture in church a few months earlier, now, on the rights of the elderly. At the time, I kept the pamphlet more out of politeness, but at that moment, it looked like a map. I took the crumpled paper from the bag, called the number of Dr. Evelyn Marks, a lawyer specializing in elderly and property protection. The secretary was kind. She made an appointment on the same day. Late afternoon, I arrived at the office on time. It was a small but cozy place. Room with the smell of fresh coffee and walls with landscape paintings. Evelyn greeted me with a firm smile. One of those who have no pity, they have posture. Sit, and I told you everything, every detail, from when Amanda came home with an air of urgency to the schedule at the kitchen table. The conversations overheard behind the door, the plan with her mother-in-law, the attempt to isolate myself. She listened to everything with a serious look, sometimes taking notes. When I finished, she made a respectful silence, and he said, Lois, this is more common than it should be, but still, it's revolting. She directed me to immediately revoke any informal authorization that Amanda could use to act for me. She helped me draft a document annulling any past power of attorney, even those that might not even officially exist, but that Amanda might have been trying to forge. It also explained to me how to record episodes of emotional abuse, even if they weren't physical, because the system needed to listen to those stories. Finally, we started to prepare a property protection plan. Nothing dramatic, nothing scandalous, all cool, all in silence, but with weight, with truth. Why, when I left that office, the sky was already beginning to darken. I felt the cold air on my face and took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt like I owned myself now, and owner of my story. Amanda had no idea. Michael much less. Whatcom. But now, I had people with me. People who knew the law. People who didn't see me as old, but as a citizen. And I knew that the hardest part was yet to come, because messing with those who feel they own what doesn't belong to them. It's like poking a nest of snakes. But I wasn't going to back down. And if you're here listening to my story, stay with me, done. Because what I found out soon after made everything even clearer and more cruel. There are things that a mother does not forget, and one of them, it is the signature that was not hers. But he showed up at the registry office. Do you want to know who it was? So wait, because the next page of that diary, it comes with a name, date, and a proof that none of them will be able to erase. I was rummaging through one of the old boxes in the hallway closet, looking for some old documents from when Frank was still alive. A black briefcase, worn at the edges, with loose elastic. I remember well keeping it there for safety, like everything that has value. In the middle of the statements, old invoices and proof of payment from the house, I found a yellowed envelope with the Bank of Massachusetts logo in the corner. It was closed, without having been opened. Wow. With my full name written by hand. I thought it was strange. I opened it carefully, feeling that dry paper crumbling around the edges. And in there, with my town, I found what I never expected to see. A loan agreement I made almost 6 years ago in the amount of $18. Wow. 0. The name of the applicant? Amanda Rutherford. How? But there, in the guarantors section, was be solo owned. My name was on it. Whoa. My signature forged. Of course. A coup signed with my own name. I stood still for a few seconds, the paper in my hand. Her heart seemed to beat slowly, as if trying to understand what her eyes already knew. Then so bad. I don't have it thought it was the case. Amanda used my name, my house, my trust, to borrow money without ever telling me, without ever even mentioning it. She used me as a shield for a risk that she herself created. What if she hadn't paid? I would have lost my home, and all of this was done behind my back. The next day, I went to the agency. Still there on Columbia Road, as if going to face a ghost. The manager, a blonde lady, friendly, and unworn, but with the eyes of someone who has seen a lot, pulled out the files. It confirmed everything. He said that Amanda presented proof of residence in my name, claiming that I was aware that the signature seemed well done, that the loan was paid, yes, with some installments in arrears, but it was closed, now come, but not forgotten, because now I knew, and that reopened a wound that I didn't even know was still bleeding. I returned home with the envelope folded inside my pocket. I sat on my bed, silently, feeling a bitter taste in my mouth. Wow. It was as if my whole life had been used as currency. My name, my history, aha, my decency. Amanda, the girl who wrote me notes, saying, "Mommy, how I love you to heaven," had now used me as if I were a blank piece of paper. The difference is that paper, after being scratched, is not cleaned again, and I, Ligord, thus, nor would it be the same again. Reflective pause. No, wow. Some memories we keep forever, like a scar that doesn't hurt anymore, but is there to remember. Well, sometimes they are sweet memories, sometimes bitter, well, but they all shape us. If you've ever been through something like this, or if you know someone who has also had their trust broken, right here in the comments, share with me. Tell me. No. Sometimes a loose memory can turn into a hug for someone else. It may even be just. I've lived it. But that's already a lot. I returned to the lawyer the next day with the document in hand. She read everything in silence. When he finished, he took off his glasses and said, "Now, we have another front. This isn't just psychological abuse. Lois, this is a crime. Ideological falsehood. Bank fraud. And you can take action." I didn't respond right away. I just nodded slowly. Because, yes, I could act, but not out of revenge, not out of hatred, for justice, for me. I left the office and walked down Commonwealth Avenue. Slowly, I feeling the wind blow through my hair. The trees were beginning to change color. Reddish leaves fell, as if autumn was also telling me, it's time to let go of what no longer fits. And there, I knew I had everything I needed. Each document, each date, every word. Betrayal was no longer suspicious. It was certain. And now, I just needed to pick the right moment. Because sometimes silence is the most accurate trap. But what I didn't expect, it was what was yet to come. Do you think you've seen rock bottom? Wait until you find out what Michael did to my name at an insurance brokerage. Because it was there that things stopped being just family and became official. The next step went too far. And this time, there was a witness. It was a morning like any other. The light came timidly through the kitchen window, illuminating the corners where only dust knew how to rest in peace. I was already sitting at the table, with my notebook open, a fresh coffee in my own way, strong, without sugar. Oh, said you, I had town. The children ran upstairs, making that usual noise, and I heard Amanda's footsteps coming down the stairs, with the haste and air of superiority that she cultivated like someone who waters a poisonous plant every day. He entered the kitchen without looking at me, went straight to the coffee maker, empty. He looked at me. Hey, where's the coffee? He asked, already impatiently in tone. I closed the notebook, calmly, looked into her eyes, and for the first time, I didn't lower mine. You're going to need to start paying rent, Amanda. The sentence came out simple, clean, as if warning that time has changed. For a second, it froze. Then he laughed. He laughed in that mocking way. As if I had told a bad joke. You're kidding. Right. Mom? Mom. I kept my posture. No, I have already spoken to a lawyer. I've already recorded everything. I have evidence of the misuse of my name, of the abuses, and you have 30 days. Her mouth opened. No, but not a word came out. It was as if the laughter had stuck in my throat. At that moment, Michael entered the kitchen with a cup in his hand, one still in his pajamas, with the same sloppy look as always. What is this rental story? He asked. Are you going to start charging now, after everything we've done for you? I stood up slowly, adjusted the shawl on my shoulders, and replied, looking into the eyes of both of them. I bought this house myself. I worked for 35 years in the public service. I raised Amanda without anyone's help. I sewed at dawn to pay for her school. And even so, I was made a maid, a guarantor, an emergency plan. Comes 30 days. After that, they either collaborate with rent or look for another place. The house was muted. That kind of silence that weighs more than screaming. Amanda tried to react. You can't do that. The house belongs to the family. I took a deep breath. No, moi. Amanda, the house is mine. It is in my name. And you know it. Michael mumbled something I didn't understand. But it didn't matter, because what needed to be said was, and what needed to be done, no, was already underway. I sat down again, took a sip of the coffee that was still hot, and opened my notebook, as if that moment had not been a turning point, because, for me, it was no longer an explosion. It was a continuation. It was what it had to be, quietly, without despair, only truth. And I swear, Nashidian, Shokodan. At that moment, I felt Frank with me, not as a ghost, but as a steady, silent presence. He would have done the same. He would have supported me, and I knew he would be proud to see me like this, whole, without shouting, without bowing, just saying what is necessary, clearly, with dignity, wide and strong. Amanda left the kitchen with stiff steps. Michael followed suit, grumbling. The children continued to play upstairs, oblivious to this silent change that was about to turn their world upside down. And I Matthew, I die. One night is foul. I went back to writing in the notebook. I wrote down the date, the time, the reaction of each one, because now every detail was part of my shield. Oh, nothing said. You know, there are moments in life when we don't need an audience or applause, just courage. And when courage comes, justice begins to take shape. Slowly, they are not calm. What's it actually but firm. But what I didn't know yet, it's just that Amanda wasn't going to accept this in silence. She was going to react. And the way she chose was dirty, very dirty, more. And when I found out, I realized that the fight was just beginning. Because whoever tries to erase the history of a mother, one, may end up discovering the weight of the truth. And the next page of my story, it won't be easy to hear, but it needs to be told. Early on Monday morning, I went to Dr. Evelyn's office. I took with me the envelope with everything we had prepared in the last few weeks. The notification was there. Simple, none. Objective and direct. A cold but necessary document. The paper said everything that my heart had been screaming for a long time, but that now it needed to be heard with the weight of the law. The notice was clear. 30-day eviction deadline. Mom. A complete list of emotional and financial abuse. Copies of attached evidence. And explicit citation of Massachusetts legislation on protecting the elderly from exploitation. It was not revenge. It was justice. And most of all, it was respect for myself. I signed calmly. The hand did not tremble. Oh. And when I handed it to the secretary to send via registered mail, I breathed as if I had just climbed a mountain. On the way down from the building, I felt the wind hitting my face, as if the world had changed its temperature. And, in a way, and it really was. There was no turning back. I returned home and started cutting the invisible threads that still held me. I called the cell phone operator and canceled the 3 additional plans that were in my name. Amanda's, Michael's, and even Luke's. I canceled the additional credit card. Well, another sorry to me, servant. I went to the bank and removed Amanda's access from my account. Even the online one she said she used just to make the house bills easier. I changed all the passwords. Wi-Fi, Amazon, Wani, Tail Ninja Targets, Amazon, Netflix, man, wow, even magazine subscriptions. I made sure to take my name off anything that benefited them, because those who use us as a step can no longer have access to our ladder. Why? I kept receipts in labeled envelopes, everything organized, all calculated, one and noun. And this time, everything was under my control. When Amanda arrived from the market that afternoon and saw her cell phone without signal, she was already annoyed. Michael came to ask me why the Wi-Fi was down. I just replied, I'd use, because now you have what you have asked for so much, independence, and went back to taking care of my plants. The next day, the two received the official notification. Amanda read it silently. On the couch, her eyes ran from line to line, and I could see her face turning red, more, first with surprise, then with anger. Michael entered the room and took the envelope from her hands. When he finished, he stared at me and asked, with a forced laugh, "Are you serious?" I just nodded. Now, Amanda tried to say something. How? But I raised my hand, calmly, as if asking for silence at a wake. No, Matana lost them touch your secret, as if asking for silence at a wake. And I said, Ma, there is no discussion. It has already been done. Meanonshu, it is registered. Now it's up to you. The house became strange in the days that followed. A heavy silence, but respectful. For the first time, they looked at me cautiously, no longer as a useful shadow, but as someone who had a name, a scripture, a voice. I was Lois again, not Lou, not the exaggerated mother. One tao, one ding siwa fa the sold on co. But the woman who created that house with effort and would no longer accept being diminished inside it. They started moving. Pengwao, I said, I saw Amanda on the phone, crying softly. Michael searching for real estate on laptop. They tried one or another, passive-aggressive comment. But I didn't react. The time for reaction has passed. Now it was harvest time. And who planted contempt was harvesting distance. But they, like every story with people who think they are entitled to everything, there was still something ahead, something that made me look at the mirror with tears in my eyes, not of sadness, but of a strength that even I didn't know I still had. Have you ever looked at someone who cheated on you? And did you have to make one last decision? Because what Amanda did the next day, it was the most disguised cry for help I've ever seen in my life. And even after it all, I still hesitated. But only for a moment, because Mother forgives. How? But don't forget, no. And he still had one last card to turn. Amanda exploded 2 days later. It was not gradually, no, nor with warning. It was like a hurricane that invades a house where the wind was never allowed to enter. She walked down the stairs, red-eyed, her hair disheveled, tapping her feet on the wooden floor like a child in her 30s who has just lost her favorite toy. "You're cruel, Mom," he shouted. "No, they're staring at me as if I were the monster in the story. One, do you want to see your grandchildren suffering? Is that what you want?" I didn't answer. Mahal. I continued to water my violets at the window. Was, with a steady hand, as if each drop that fell into the vase cleaned some of the poison she spread around the house. She came to me, trembling with anger, and uttered another sentence as if throwing a stone. You have always been selfish. He always thought of you. Now, it's going to leave us on the street. I stopped, looked at her calmly, and he said only one thing. Amanda, William Seotow. Now you are having what you asked me for 2 years. Freedom. Use it wisely. She cried. No can't hurt. I'll said what? Hate. I'm the seer he cried. He cried loudly. She threw herself on the couch as she did when she was a girl, and I didn't buy the new doll. Only now, it wasn't about toys. It was about responsibility. Michael tried to be the smart one. He took out his cell phone, called a lawyer he knew, and started talking loudly on purpose, as if I was going to be scared by words like housing rights, adverse possession, ideal become after you shared property. But it only took 3 minutes on the line for the lawyer to cut off his hope. Michael, the house is in her name. Legally? Wow. You are guests. If she wants, she calls the police. He hung up quietly. Yes, that's when the games began. Amanda stopped talking to me. No, but spoke loudly for the boys to hear. Grandma doesn't want us here anymore. She wants to send us away. Imagine. Oh, what are we going to do? Luke, the eldest, was confused. But it's Grandma's house, isn't it? He asked, with the innocence of someone who has not yet learned to manipulate. Amanda did not answer. He just cried louder. Michael tried to fake normalcy. He passed me saying good morning in a slurred voice, trying to force a sympathy he never had. He stopped using Wi-Fi. Monacom. Started working in a cafe on Adams Street. Amanda started cooking badly, by the way, and I complained about the market price, as if I should still feel guilty for not paying for everything. But I was going strong, because when we finally understand the value of our own silence, no one else can make us scream. On one of the most tense days, Amanda tried to hug me. He came with a glass of lemonade in his hand, saying, fired tall. Do you want it? I did it your way. Noon. Hunt sucked sow. With little sugar. I accepted. Out of politeness, I drank in silence. And she began. Mom, is there really no other way out? We can try again. I can organize the house your way. Nice. Michael will look for another place. He will only stay a few more months. I rushed. I let her talk, and when it was over, I spoke in the same voice as always. Amanda, this is not about going out. It's about respect, and respect no longer lives here. She threw the tea towel on the floor. None, I'd dial. Slammed the bedroom door. The house seemed smaller. Their noise no longer scared me. It was just noise, because now I was whole. For the first time in many years, I felt the house breathing with me. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Enjoy this video and subscribe. Mom. And let's make this story reach those who need it. The following days were a parade of uncontrolled emotions. Amanda cried softly at night. Michael spent the day silent, immersed in his laptop, one-eyed sound, probably looking for apartments or writing nonsense in Facebook groups. Luke and little Tyler began to look at me with more respect. Maybe out of fear, maybe out of intuition. A child feels when an adult becomes whole again, when a broken heart starts to stick to itself. without asking for help. And in the middle of this hurricane, I kept the timer on. Little Bartgue. Each day that passed was one more step towards freedom. But, like every story, there was still a twist in store. Something Amanda tried to do behind her back. Once again, and that almost destroyed everything. Almost. Because if there's one thing this story has taught, it's just that I am no longer a distracted woman, and whoever plays dirty with a mother's name can end up being unmasked in front of everyone, even before the law itself. Want to know how I found out? Wait, because the mask has fallen, in a way that still echoes through the walls of this house today. On the day of the move, I was sitting in the chair on the porch with my favorite plaid blanket over my legs. The sky was clear, without a single cloud. And the wind was blowing slowly, as if he also knew that this was the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. The truck parked in front of the house shortly after 9 in the morning. A strong young man came down from the cabin and began carrying boxes. Amanda hadn't spoken to me since the last confrontation. And Michael was also silent, too busy organizing what, for me, had never been theirs. I didn't come down from the balcony. I stood there, with my coffee in hand, watching in silence. It wasn't pleasure I felt. It wasn't revenge either. It was something different. A sad but necessary peace. Seeing them leave was like seeing a wound finally being sewn up. It still hurt, but it was already closing. They walked around the house in a hurry, avoiding my gaze, and I understood. Shame, when it comes late, does not change the past, but corrodes the present. When I saw Luke leaving with a backpack on his back, I allowed myself a shy nod. He hesitated. He looked at his mother, then at me, and reciprocated with a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was the only gesture of humanity that morning. Amanda passed me with teary but firm eyes. Michael, with his head down, didn't say a word. There was no goodbye. There was no thank you. What is a time? Just a gate closing, and a silence that finally made sense. Minutes after the truck turned the corner, my phone rang. It was Dr. Evelyn. Lois. The final documents have been filed. Amanda's name has been removed from any previous authorization. The house is legally protected, and his legal insurance was approved. Everything is resolved. I thanked him in a calm voice. I hung up. Leaned my head on the chair and closed my eyes for a few seconds. I had become the owner of my house again. From my story of my peace, there are people who think that justice is noise, which is confusion, door slamming, neighbor listening. But I learned that the most beautiful justice is the one that happens in silence, within us, because when our soul breathes again, there is no cry that compares. I spent the next few days cleaning the rooms carefully, as if removing not only dust, but bad memories. I removed the tags from the cabinets Amanda had put up, undid the absurd rules they hung in the laundry room, and even threw away that damn schedule. I rearranged the room as it was in Frank's time. I put the old photos back on the shelves, and for the first time in years, I cooked just for myself. My coffee, my way, my dinner, and so away, just the way I like it. I remembered every step taken so far. The girl who sewed at dawn, the woman who raised her daughter alone, the old woman who was treated as a servant, and now, Nayu, of the woman who did not lower her head nor accept oblivion. A day later, walking through the streets of Dorchester, I met Mrs. Rayon Bradley, and my old neighbor, whom I had not seen for a long time. Hi. She looked at me and said, Lois, there's something different about you. It's more me. Oh? I smiled. We are not New York. I figured. Okay, so I'm talking. I want you. You well. It's just that. Now, it's just me here. And this house, finally, no, is at peace. She gave me a long hug, one of those that don't need an explanation, because sometimes we don't need to tell everything. You just need to feel that someone understands. And look, if you've been listening to this story this far, it's because some part of it is also yours. So listen to me. Listen to me. We are never too old to defend ourselves. It's never too late to get up. And silence can be the most powerful voice there is when you learn to use it firmly. But before you think the story is over, there's something you need to know. Because one last visit came unannounced, and she came not with suitcases, nor with screams, but with a request. And what Amanda said when she came back here, alone, with her eyes downcast, it was the last thing I expected to hear, and perhaps the most difficult as well. You think you know the ending, but do you really know? Because what she brought in that grocery bag, it would change everything. She appeared on a gray afternoon, one of those in which the sky seems to carry the same melancholy that lives in us. I was folding some clothes on the couch when I heard the doorbell. I looked through the curtain and saw that figure that I would recognize even with my eyes closed. Amanda, then I said, Cara, alone, lean, tired, with a grocery bag in her hand and a blouse that seemed too big for her body. I didn't open it. I just watched. She stood there for a few minutes, without ringing the bell again, as if she knew it was too much to have pressed it once. And then, when Sue, with his eyes downcast, he put the bag on the floor and walked away slowly. I waited for the corner to swallow his steps before leaving. Inside the bag was a jar of applesauce, my favorite, and a crumpled card with shaky letters. Mom, sorry for everything. I miss you. Amanda, Lee, wait a while. I kept the card in my souvenir drawer, not out of nostalgia, but out of respect for the woman I was. Because forgiving sometimes is just accepting that the pain existed and not letting it come back. I never answered, and it wasn't out of cruelty. It was out of protection. A few days later, Nedbound, a few days later, Mrs. Bradley told me, as we were picking up mail, that Amanda was living in a small, two-bedroom apartment in an old building near the North Quincy station. He helped in a small second-hand shop on the internet and received aid from the state. Michael had not been able to find a job and, according to them, spent his days complaining about the system. The boys had moved to a cramped public school, away from their old friends, and Amanda now did everything herself. She was no longer the manager of everything, as she called herself here. It was a mother trying to balance broken plates after he threw the table on the floor. Now, I was silent. The coffee was cold in my hand, but my heart was warm, not of joy for her fall, but of peace for knowing that life, when we respect it, is in charge of teaching, and that what is done with the other return, not always in the same format, not always with the same strength, but it comes back. It was then that a neighbor on the back street, Mrs. Jensen, asked me in the market, Lois, has she come to see you yet? They say has even going to church now. I smiled slightly. She knows where my door is, and he knows what he did with it. There was no grudge in my voice. There was fatigue. There was firmness. And there was a kind of freedom that only those who survived the abandonment of a child can understand. I received 2 more cards in the following months. One on my birthday, with an old photo of us on Cape Cod Beach, and another at Christmas, with longer words. I wish I was there with you. I'm so sorry for everything. Wow. I hope one day he can forgive me. I didn't tear any, but I didn't answer, because silence is sometimes the only form of love that can still be given to those who have hurt us. The love that says I exist, but far from you. These days, tidying up the basement, wow. I found the cloth bunny that Amanda carried on the first day of school. I washed it, sewed up the torn ear, and left it on the nightstand in the guest room, the one she thought she could take me off, because no matter how hard you try to erase a story, some things remain. And I stayed. Oh, I stayed in my home, with my dignity and my memory at peace. Maybe she thinks she still has time to go back, and maybe it does, but not to the same house, nor to the same place in my heart, because that Lois who lowered her eyes, who accepted orders, who smiled with hidden tears, that one, Amanda lost. And there's no card that will bring her back. But the story, I still had one last whisper to give, because on the morning of my 74th birthday, something unexpected happened, and it wasn't a card, not even a visit. It was a gesture, small, but loaded with a meaning that, to this day, makes me tremble inside. Do you believe that even one flower can change everything? because the one who appeared at my gate, it brought a truth that I could never ignore again. It was a clear spring morning, one of those in which the light enters through the cracks in the curtain, as if asking permission to wake us up slowly. I sat in my rocking chair, facing the living room window, with my chamomile tea in my hands. The garden outside, the town, which had been forgotten for so long, now bloomed again. The daisies sprouted again, stubbornly. I see between the stones of the flower bed. The birds sang in the trees as if they had not witnessed everything that happened inside. It was as if nature, Neptaxod Ham, which never speaks, knew that the house had breathed again, and so did I. So did I. I stood there, quietly, watching the street where I had lived my whole life. I saw children going to school with their backpacks bigger than their bodies. I saw Mrs. Jensen sweeping the pavement in her flowered apron. I saw life go on, and I felt something inside me that I hadn't felt for a long time. Lightness. It was not euphoria, nor gaudy joy. It is a quiet peace, which only comes after a hurricane, and it stays. I talked to Frank, as I always do, on days when the heart tightens and softens. I didn't leave ours. I cannot talk then. I should not done stole out you down. Frank, the old wow. They went, and, it took a while, but I understood. Wow. We don't need to go screaming for the world that has value. We just need to stop accepting being treated as if we didn't have it. I felt like he heard me. Deep down, I believe he really does. He always listened. I was young, full of desire to get it right, to do everything right, to be the perfect mother. I didn't watch so Tito. I don't how. How many nights did I spend awake, taking care of Amanda with a fever? How many dinners did I skip eating to ensure hers? And even so, at some point along the way, love became a charge. Care has become a debt. And I wondered so many times what I had done wrong, until I understand that I wasn't the one who made a mistake. It was she who chose to forget. Today, I know that love is not an obligation, that respect is not automatic, not even between mother and daughter, and that we don't need to give our hearts to those who only know how to step on it. Many people confuse aging with weakening, but I found that old age didn't take away my strength. It gave me back wisdom, and it taught me that sometimes the greatest act of courage is silence. The silence that refuses, the silence that does not give way, the silence that liberates. There, no, sitting in front of that window, watching the light hit the green leaves of the garden, I understood that what I lost in forced affection, and I gained in dignity. Am no less of a mother for having said enough, am more of a woman because I didn't accept crumbs. And the house, the house, she's full of me again. Wow. Each corner had my smell, my rhythm, my presence again. The stove only lights up when I want it to. The kitchen light only stays on as far as it comforts me. And the doors, they only open up to those who understand that an entire woman lives here. And you, who have been listening to every bit of this story, do you feel that too? This desire to say enough to everything, that diminishes you. That courage that is born when we realize that we no longer need to please those who hurt us. So stay a little longer. One day, Kaka, because there's still one last thing I need to tell you. Something that happened in the late afternoon, with a brown envelope and a name I hadn't seen for a long time. It was there that I knew, with all the letters, that life does not forget, and that justice sometimes arrives in writing. That night, after a quiet day, I cleaned the kitchen table with the same delicacy as someone who closes an important chapter of life. The paper was still there, yellowed at the edges, folded in the corner of the drawer where I kept so much hurt. It was the schedule that Amanda gave me one day, the one with the tasks. The schedules, the orders, as if I were any other employee. I picked up a match, striking it calmly, and I saw the flames start dancing on that cold paper. I watched each line turn to gray. Wake up at 6 a.m. Now, the 6 caster. And the bow now. Clean the bathroom. Do laundry. Each demand being consumed by fire. Well, as if the house itself said, "Here, cowards, countries, I am in charge." I opened the window. The smoke rose slowly, serenely, dissolving into the night air like everything I had ever tried to hold on to no avail. And at that moment, I smiled. Because some freedoms don't make noise. They only breathe. I went upstairs, put the match in the box, and went to my room. I lay down slowly, now, feeling the clean sheet touch my body like an old hug. I took my journal, the one I started after Frank left, and wrote in my tired but firm handwriting. I was called heavy. I was treated as an expense. But in the end, I was the only one who paid for everything. With love, with presence, with silence. They lost another. I have earned my peace. I closed my eyes right away, and I slept like I hadn't slept in a long time. Today, no, the house remains silent. But it's another kind of silence. It is not the one who suffocates. It is the one who welcomes. Loneliness doesn't hurt when we know we're at peace with ourselves. I continue to take care of the garden, make my tea, go to Sunday Mass, read my books. No one calls me an employee anymore, nor does he tell me how to live. With wrinkles, with memories, with history, and now, with freedom. Amanda follows her life elsewhere. He still sends cards sometimes, but I don't wait anymore. Forgave, but from afar, because I learned that forgiveness is not about accepting back. It is letting go of the weight of resentment and going light, and that love, when it becomes an obligation, ceases to be love. If there's one thing this story has taught me, and that I wanted to leave with you who listened to me until the end. It's that it's never too late to reclaim what's ours, even if it's just our name, our home, our place in the world. Being a mother is not erasing yourself. Being old is not canceling yourself. And be good. It does not mean accepting everything quietly. Today I know time does not erase who we are. It only reveals who we have always been. And as much as the world tries to make us small, there is a strength within us that no one can take away. The strength to start over. If you have stayed with me so far, my heart will thank you. His listening was a comfort. Your presence, a hug. I told this story with an open heart, and if it touched you in any way, leave a like here, like someone who leaves a blanket on the shoulders of someone who just cried. And if you want to come back for another coffee, another story, subscribe here to the channel. Wow, because I still have a lot of things stored. And maybe one of them is the story you need to hear. Tell me where you watch me from, which city, and Idlestown, which corner of this world is listening to me now. I read everything. See? And if you can, activate the bell too. That way you don't miss out when the coffee is brewed again. And look, don't go away yet. Listen to the next real story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.